Kia ora koutou. It is wonderful to be able to have this beautiful screen in front of me with some amazing play advocates and passionate play people. Before we get into the content this evening, I do want to start us off with a karakia, an acknowledgement of Matariki this week. So very briefly, Manawa Maia te pūtanga o Matariki, Manawa Maia te ariki o te rangi, Manawa mai te mātahi o te tau, whano, hare mai te tokiata huakirangi, haumi hui taiki Kia ora everyone, and welcome along to the State of Play panel discussion that we are running this evening for Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome to our followers. I know that this has been an exciting event for many to be able to access. I'm really excited to have this screen of amazing people in front of me here. So I'm going to do some quick introductions for those of you that know some of these people or may be familiar with some names but not faces. So for those who don't know me, my name is Sarah Aiono. I'm the CEO and one of the directors of Longworth Education, and you'll probably no doubt have seen me popping up on our Joy of Play Facebook group, sharing information and bits and pieces about play. We have Andrew King. I'm just going to go from my left to right. So Andrew King is with us, and he is the principal of Oropi School, situated in the Bay of Plenty. To my right, we have Gareth Cunliffe, who is the principal of Aotearoa School in Aotearoa. We have Linda Chair, who is my co-director at Longworth Education. I have Amber Donaldson, who is a classroom teacher at Oxford Crescent. She is the play lead at Oxford Crescent School in Upper Hutt, and our most recent addition to the Longworth Education team as an in-school consultant. I have Kate Webber, who is here with two roles, representing her company Junkie Monkeys, and is also a Longworth Education facilitator, and she's based in Tāmaki, Makaurau. I have Gareth Sinton, principal of Douglas Park School based in Masterton. I have Anne Rush, classroom teacher based in at Northcote Primary School and on the North Shore in Auckland. I have Annette Pram, who is classroom teacher at Western Heights School, also in Auckland. Carolyn Mason, who is a co-director, I understand, or facilitator at Ready for Learning. And Anne Langus, who is another Longworth facilitator and also runs her own company, Anne Langus Play. Leslie Allen, who is the principal of Kōrero Hore School. And for those of you that know number agents and follow number agents, that is her wonderful piece of work as well. And I also have Kayla Dawson, who's just joined us, and she is the deputy principal from St Patrick's School in Napier. I do have one apology. Susie Kerr, who is a teacher at Waitaha Special School, unfortunately, due to the wonderful scheduling of Jetstar, has not been able to join us this evening. So I have actually asked her to return maybe as a guest for Play Conversations instead. So that's the consolation prize if you don't get on here tonight, as you get cast back for a podcast. So because we've got limited time and we want to get straight into some questions and some discussion going with this group, the format for this is I'm going to put the questions to the group, and because we've got so many here, we're going to just ask a couple of people at a time to comment. This is live on Facebook, so if you would like to ask questions to the group, please do put them in the comments. I'll be monitoring them. If you've got any feedback you want to give to the panel, that would be great. But we'll head straight into the first question. So this question is a focus on the outdoor play movement in connection with the education system. So the question is, how has the emphasis on outdoor play changed in New Zealand's education system over the past 5 years? And what impact has this shift had on views about the importance of playing outside? So I'm going to start off by asking Linda to answer that, and then we will go to Kate and Anne. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah, I think it has changed a huge amount in the last 5 years. And prior to that, we really didn't hear very much about teachers taking their children outside for play with large loose parts. We didn't hear very much about trying to have bush schools or access to bush. Various schools have that now. Forest schools, of course, that movement has really accelerated in recent times. So it's really wonderful to see that teachers are trying to access the outside environment as much as possible. I think teachers are still battling really the setup in schools. For some teachers, it's impossible to get their children outside on a routine basis. I think one of the schools that we visited quite recently, the teacher was in a classroom that was actually landlocked. So there was absolutely no access outside at all. So I think teachers are really still battling with that, understanding the importance of it, but then trying desperately to find ways around it. So I think it has had a huge impact in teachers, how they have implemented play. I still think we have a long way to go, but it's been very heartening to see that progress. And I think teachers are much more aware now of how important it is to get children outside, especially for those real hyperactive children who just need to get outside and run and jump and do all those physical activities. So as I say, it is heartening, but I think we possibly have a little way to go yet. And I don't know whether Kate and Anne will agree with me there. How do you feel about that, Kate?
Yeah, I definitely agree that you can hear more kōrero around outdoor play, nature play, even outdoor classrooms. I mean, that's really exciting when you hear about that happening in schools. I went on an amazing tour a few weeks back with Annette into her beautiful school at Western Heights School up here in Auckland, and they have an amazing outdoor classroom set up in their school where they're pulling kids away, mainly in their seniors, and they have a dedicated outdoor classroom teacher who teaches 1 day a week. So I'm definitely seeing more talk and more emphasis and more kōrero around that, which is really exciting. I think there's a few things maybe that have contributed to that. I think there's an amazing conference called the Natural Phenomena Conference, which if you haven't heard about here in Aotearoa, it's incredible. And that predominantly has been for early childhood teachers. And I think that's where you've probably heard more about nature play and outdoor play. I think they've kind of been on the ball a little bit faster than us about that. And going to that for a number of years now, you can see that there's actually growing numbers of primary school teachers attending that, which is really exciting. I run a loose parts play program. So just to tautoko what Linda's saying, what we hear constantly is those teachers who have those kids in classrooms who are bouncing off walls and can't focus, and they take them outside of the four walls, and most common quote is they become leaders, they shine, that kind of thing. So I was just thinking about it when you were talking about it, Linda, and the work that we do at Longworth, how we've kind of started to shine more of a light on those urges and those schema, and how we recognize now that we have to really provide environments where kids can climb, they can run, they can push, they can pull, they can chase, those kind of things. And we just can't do those things indoors. We really need to do them outside. I also want to point out that something exciting is that schools are kind of recognizing that actually they have these beautiful environments that are primed for outdoor play and they're not utilizing them, kind of thing. So I'm starting to have kōreros with principals and saying, well, look, you've got this incredible bush area that you could use for some outdoor classroom or outdoor play. Why isn't it being utilized? So yeah, I know that Amber Donaldson here might want to talk more about that. But Anne, what have you noticed?
Thanks, Kate. I was thinking about some of the high-level systemic factors that have been at play over the past 5 years that I've been aware of. One of those is that the kind of greater awareness of a place-based learning approach. And so I have heard more use of that term, and particularly around mātauranga Māori. So I've seen some schools and kura using that as the connection with mātauranga Māori as a way to really drive their getting outside, their why behind what they're doing outside, and feeling a real sense of purpose around that. So I think that's been a real lovely shift over the past couple of years. Also coming out of COVID, being of course one of the main systemic impacts over the past 5 years, that I think that also pushed schools to really think about being outside, particularly in Tamaki Makaurau, how to make use of that outdoor space. But I would tautoko you, Kate, around, it's great to hear of schools talking about how to get into the natural environment, because I think the next step for a lot of those schools is not just outside, meaning like outside of the classroom door. So I'm seeing a lot more openness, not as much concern around Health and Safety at Work Act and what that might have meant, as opposed to 5 years ago, the concerns that school boards might have been having around what does this mean for us. So kids being supported to learn outside of the door, maybe, kind of within eyesight and on the blacktop or on the covered porch outside of the classroom. But that next step of actually utilizing those more natural wild spaces that do exist at a lot of our schools, that there's so much opportunity, that I don't see that happening in a lot of schools. But I do see this awareness of just open up the door, that's okay, give them some fresh air, mostly for those super boisterous kids with lots of energy. But I do think that there's been a positive shift in that space, and hopefully the next step can be about moving more widely into the outdoors in the school grounds.
Thank you, Anne and Kate and Linda. It's definitely food for thought. And I just want to just build on Anne's comments there around some of the movement within Mātauranga Māori and understanding the use of the natural environment, and acknowledge the amazing work that Huckle Brown is doing in that space, and his promotion of traditional Māori games and Māori playgrounds. If anyone's interested in learning more about that, then please look up his work. It's fantastic, the work he's doing. So second question now for this panel. And this is directed primarily at our senior leaders in this group. And I've also tagged in Anne here because I want to tap into Anne's experience at Play Centre and some of the early childhood settings that she's seen. But this question is, in your experience, what are the key factors influencing the decline or promotion of play-based learning in early childhood education and primary schools across the country? So I'm going to start with Leslie there. If Leslie, you're able to start us off with that question.
Yeah, I guess starting out with decline, if I talk about myself as a teacher, before I started my play-based journey, now seems like many moons ago, play was something they did before they got to school. So when they got to school, school was school, and you sat down and you did what you needed to do. Also, there was a culture of acceleration, and I think to some degree there still is, unfortunately, out there. So play was seen as frivolous. It was seen as something. I had a task board, so you could go and choose from the task board and move your name, and play wasn't valued or understood. And I guess it just completely declined with us being overemphasizing, ironically, with our fallen standards, literacy, numeracy, national standards, all of that stuff. It just got completely squashed out. And we're a rural school, so that's pretty sad. I guess in the promotion of play, talking about from our perspective, coming to understand that it was informed by science and child development. Oral language was huge for me, and it was my beginning point. Seems quite small now, but it was really major for me to even think that, okay, if I gave them more time to talk, perhaps their talk would increase and they would improve. understanding that there's not the safety concerns. That was a big thing in the decline of play, was the real safety concerns. If I let them outside and I can't see them, I'm not doing my job properly. We've become more trusting of children. I know we have, and what we saw in terms of when we became more trusting was they really rose to that. Became more child-centered and understanding the individual. And I guess play has been promoted recently a lot through COVID, you know, children coming with really poor social emotional skills. It's not a magic bullet, but it certainly does a great job promoting social emotional skills. All the things that teachers are noticing in their classrooms with 5-year-olds now, play could really help with. But yeah, I guess it's just was a lack of understanding, and now increased understanding, increased, I guess, people like us out there advocating for it. People like me who've traveled both paths, and we were a very, very rigidly acceleration-based school. So for me to flip that on its head and actually have better results now speaks volumes. So hopefully that answers that.
Thank you, Leslie. Andrew, can I come to you?
Yeah, I've got it's interesting hearing our different perspectives on the question and the framing of the question, because I'm sort of thinking currently right now we've got a lot of distractions going on in the sector, and I think we're really, as school leaders and teachers, we're really time poor. And in a lot of schools, I'm making an assumption here that there's a view that play is another thing to implement. And when you've got the structured literacy movement, you've got the curriculum refresh happening, all these things happening around addressing your localized curriculum, it just seems all too hard to therefore have to think about what you're doing with your play-based learning across the school. But I guess where I come from is that play-based learning provides very much a solution, a framework, a philosophy, a backbone behind your curriculum. And so I guess that's how I play-based learning doesn't get forgotten at Aotearoa School, because it's our backbone and purpose and philosophy behind everything we do. It's not just an add-on program. So I think that helps deal with any negativity around implementing play, if that makes sense.
That does, yeah, thank you. And we do talk a lot about schools being really purposeful in their why, which I think is really important, isn't it?
I also think a lot of schools have really good intention with play, but because of all the other distractions going on, it's actually very hard to implement play effectively. And when you've got all these other things going on, it can just it just gets easily forgotten as something to carry on the momentum with.
Absolutely, yeah. Gareth Sinton, can I come to you?
Yeah, sure. Interesting hearing from Leslie and from Andrew there. Very similar kind of things in my head at the minute. I think just building off what you said, Andrew, I think one of the problems with the distractions that we're having in the sector is that the conversation is often framed as a binary kind of choice. Say in the media at the minute, you know, you're forever reading about poor attendance or poor achievement. And the way that it's framed is you either have to go down an academic path or you have to go down a student-centered path. And sort of, it's a very divisive conversation. Whereas the reality is that that part in the middle, the gray, the richness that lives there, that's the conversation that we probably need to be having. What's some, you know, the best practice out there in terms of how kids acquire literacy skills and numeracy skills, that stuff's important. But also the things that play and student-centered approaches to learning, all the things that they help develop in terms of the whole child, all that stuff's important as well. So the conversation should be a discursive thing, both, but it's not. It's framed as you choose this path of student-centered and you're damned in the media, or you choose this path of academic outcomes, you know, to the lack of things for your kids. I also think the sector is just in a mess in terms of, if you asked anyone around the country what the purpose of education was, I think you'd get a million different answers. And that is probably at the heart of some of the barriers or pushback against things like play. If you believe the purpose is to get kids through to university, well, that's a whole different discussion, isn't it? Whether if you believe that our job is to allow kids to have open doors, no matter what they choose when they leave school, that discussion's different. Yeah, so for me, the promotion and the sort of the decline, that kind of thing, it comes down to those things, the binary narrative, which is not helpful, and the fact I think the system has lost sight of what its point is. What is our purpose here?
Yeah, great. That's a whole other expert panel discussion, I think, Gareth, and it would be a really rich one to have. Gareth Cunliffe, can I come to you?
Yes, kia ora koutou. Sarah, thank you for inviting me. I feel quite honoured. Leslie, I come from a similar environment to you with that acceleration and the national standards thing, and to change those mindsets are really, really difficult. I actually agree with the other Gareth, my namesake as well, is either academic or it's play. Are we turning the school into a play school? Well, actually, you know what? We're not. We're doing everything. We're doing both. I think it comes from even before national standards. I think it comes from community, parents, people wanting their children to be taught the way they were taught. And if they're not being taught within those four walls, then we're not teaching, which is why we've embraced your P-Block tool, which when you do tell them it's teacher directed as much as it is child-centered. I don't know what we weren't armed with anything before, but with that little bit of effective teacher practice in a nutshell has helped us a lot. There's also the other thing about getting ready, and I think I don't know who alluded to this, but getting ready for where they go next, to their intermediate or their high school, and how can you assure us then they're going to be ready for when they get to intermediate? What is ready? That is slightly frustrating because the skills and the dispositions that they're learning at Aotearoa will ensure that they get ready. Our graduate student profile, when they leave year sixes, our community can see where they can see all Tonga children, and play will just add. What doesn't add to it, it just underlies it, as my friend Andrew has said as well. So the misconceptions about what play is, the play is free, but it's not a free for all, because we actually do have rules, and so very challenging overcoming these little hurdles and things with our community. But I know we'll get there, and I've listened to Leslie's story on the online ones as well, so we might need to have a chat at some stage. Yeah, so it's that getting ready thing for high school. And but what about if if they're just playing and they get to intermediate, they're not going to know how to sit there and do work. But like really, intermediate schools do have play. They have their pathways. They have lots of EOTC. They play a lot. Next level, I don't know about that, but we'll have to work on those, because there's definitely opportunities there. I mean, barriers. There are lots of barriers. It's the mindset about that word play as well. When they hear the word play, they kind of just makes people crazy. But when you understand, when you explain to them what it actually means, we're not changing that word, that's what we do and that's what we should be doing more of, then I think that puts it all into perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right.
Just a few barriers. Yeah.
all overcomable though. Absolutely all overcomable. Of
course.
Kayla, can I come to you?
Yeah, sure. I think each of you have sort of touched on aspects that we're finding in our context, and I'm very new in my role, but we're definitely talking about the and like we can absolutely have a play environment as well as meet all the requirements of the curriculum, so to speak. It's an and, not an and or. And I wrote down the quote that I absolutely love out of Te Whāriki, that we're seeking children who are competent and confident learners and communicators, healthy in mind, body and spirit, secure in their sense of belonging and in the knowledge that they make a valued contribution to society. And I just love that. I'm probably going off the question a little bit now, aren't I? But I love that with an and environment, we are preparing these children for being valuable contributors of society. Like, it isn't an and or ever. And I suppose probably our challenge in our context is being loud and proud about that amongst our community and with our, amongst our families and our local, the schools close to us as well. It's like you're talking about, Gareth, the binary conversation. It is difficult, but I definitely I can relate to all that's been said.
That quote ties nicely with what we're getting kids ready for.
Yeah.
Yeah, a very changing, uncertain world that doesn't guarantee anything right now. So absolutely, it's much bigger than being able to just quote off subjects and facts and knowledge. There's a whole lot more going on out there. Anne Langus, can I just come to you very quickly? Just a quick touch, because we have included early childhood in here, and I just wanted to borrow your Play Centre hat for a minute, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah, pleasure. So I've been involved with Play Centre about 15 years, and I'm currently on the board, and what we're saying is that we've gotten a big boost in enrollments since COVID. So we're chalking that up to a lot more people working from home, having flexible work arrangements, and also getting really interested in their children's development from being so actively a part of it during lockdowns and feeling that kind of responsibility and also excitement of being involved. So we've seen a real boost, and all of you primary schools out there, get ready for these Play Centre parents coming, and hope that you appreciate us of what we bring. But again, just in terms of the wider ECE, what I've seen through my consultancy work is again, just the parents of what impacts on how much play is provided in those spaces. And actually it was Gareth C, that question of, are they ready? Will they be ready? Will they be ready for that next step? That's what I'm hearing from the ECE that are bringing me in to support with things like, we want more nature play, we want more outdoor play, we want more loose parts play, but really a lot of the question, they know the stuff, actually, a lot of the question is, how do we sell this to the parents? And so, yeah, I think this exactly what you were saying, Gareth, is about supporting with understanding of developmental stages, and people just they don't have that awareness of it, except the Play Centre parents.
Yeah, and I do know it was a recent discussion at the IPA World Conference around the commodification of the early years and the impact of that commodification on delivery and outcomes for children. So that is a significant aspect when we turn that service into a business. Then obviously we're governed by what our clients want. So that's the flip side to that, being that commodification. Okay, third question here. It almost feels a little bit like speed dating. I hope that's not the experience for everyone this evening. So the third question that I have here is, what strategies or initiatives have been successful in incorporating learning through play into the curriculum, and how can these approaches be further supported and scaled up? So I'm going to go to Annette first for that question, please.
Right, good evening, nice to be here. I suppose the strategies with like all new entrant classes, it's just upskilling your teachers, getting their PD, making sure that they feel comfortable, because it's really important that teachers know about the brain and how it actually works, so that when that child walks into your classroom, they are getting the best education from you, because we don't want to just know that their favourite colour is pink or they like dinosaurs. We want to know, we know all about your child. So we've been doing play for quite a while. So what we did this year, we've decided to do a new initiative, is change our reporting. Rather than the parents sit down and we talk to them, tell us about your child. Well, we kind of already know their child because they've been in a play-based classroom. So we knew them quite well by term one. So what we did as a team of year 0 and 1 teachers, so there's 10 of us, we all got together and we opened up the classroom. So we had an open day for them. So everyone else, the year 2s and ups, had their normal meeting with the parents. But for us, we got all our play centres, all our early childhood centres, all around our area, and also obviously all our parents to come in as well. And took them through what a day looks like in a play-based classroom, so they can see how we incorporate the curriculum, that it's not just, oh, they're just playing, what actually play is and how we use our outdoor area, because children need to move. They shouldn't be inside. Our children need to be outside. So using the inside and the outside, and just basically how that works for us. And I suppose, you know, so the parents know how important it is to observe their child, to see what do they need, what key competencies do they need, what social stage of play are they at. There's so much interplay. So yeah, that's kind of the initiative that we did this year.
Thank you, Annette. Amber, can I come to you?
Kia ora koutou. I would have to share our initiative that we started last year at Oxford Crescent, was to take away the four walls of the classroom, get on a bus and plop our 5 and 6 year olds in the middle of the bush. We have a really great local park, which had a very natural boundary for our children to safely play in. It wasn't fenced, but if you were on the grass, you were out of bounds. We had a hugely high trust model in there for the children, and they really rose to the occasion. But what was really exciting for our teachers and the parents and the children was taking away tables, taking away walls, letting children play with the natural and in the natural environment. And talking about education for parents, we had so many parents who were keen to come along after they heard about the really cool things that were happening in that space. And when you wrote learning stories or reported against what you did in the bush on any particular day, you tagged in the curriculum and you celebrated the resilience, the persistence, and many, many key competencies in other parts of the curriculum. That was the education, and that was where we put value on it. And that's what parents valued as well. And for our teachers, it gave us a really wonderful opportunity to really use that notice, recognise, respond model. Notice what the children were doing, celebrating with them what they were doing, tagging what they were doing with words and language from the curriculum, but also being able to bring a lot of learning back to the classroom to extend their knowledge around native birds, around eggs and nests, around different types of shelters that can be built in. Like, it was just huge for our practice, for our teachers' practice, and also for our children, and also for our community, about the importance and value of nature play and just play in general for our children's development.
Awesome. Thank you, Amber. And there's lots of amazing things going on inside the context of your classroom in your school, as well as Bush School too. Anne, can I come to you? Anne Rush, please.
Kia ora, everyone. One of the major initiatives that we've and strategies at our school, and it's kind of, I have to say, it wasn't really planned to start, it's just evolved. So we've had a really huge focus on integrating play into the curriculum through literacy and shared books and big books, and that's been a huge focus for us. This has helped us develop a bank of resources in terms of concrete resources for the children to use, and also a really valuable thing in terms of teachers. We've actually built collaborative plans. So instead of reinventing the wheel each time when you decide to do fantail, we've actually got one plan there that is linked to teachers' planning, which makes it time smart. And also it makes that actual document richer because people are actually adding to it. So you can go down and say, oh, so-and-so added this activity. I'll go and pop and talk to her and see what she did. That's actually been really, really good for this, and I'm good for that. And I've also been really lucky to have a team of teachers, both ECE teachers and reading recovery teachers, who also share my passion for literacy and play. And it's just lovely to see this coming through, and what we in the responsive planning and teaching that we do through play.
Wonderful. Yeah. And you share a lot of your experiences on Facebook too. I do keep up with those. So
I wasn't going to mention that,
but yeah, it's wonderful sharing as well for the community. Yeah.
I also think too, we've gradually moved from traditional long-term plans into curriculum mapping, and that's also been a valuable tool as well. Using that to inform where we take our learning, rather than saying, well, week 5 to 10 we've got to learn about dinosaurs. Actually, we're taking that from what we see from the children and using that and having those rich conversations at team meetings and moving it forward that way. So I think that's been a real plus as well. It's, again, a really rich document to have to look back on and look for gaps and think, okay, what literacy provocation or what book could we use to cover something that maybe we haven't touched on in the first few terms. So that's been really valuable as well.
Thank you, Anne. And I'll come to Kayla for your comments around that as well.
Yeah, I think for us, it was about teachers being able to be creative again. You know, I think for so long, so much has been prescribed. And so it was actually, even though our school is sort of a traditional environment with single cell classrooms and stuff, it's like, how can we be creative about how we use our spaces? And I think in lots of ways it's irrelevant, because it's what we allow our children to do and how they use the spaces that makes the difference. So I think we've really, despite our single cell classrooms, we've been creative with how we've set that up and allowed them to use those spaces. And that's obviously started in our junior school, and we're working, we're hoping that it'll go school-wide one day. But definitely allowing teachers to be creative, but also becoming confident in our curriculum too, because it's such an amazing resource that isn't a prescription as such, but creating opportunities for teachers to be creative with it, I suppose, but also understanding the importance of collaboration and building a collective language. And I think you mentioned, Annette, like how we're growing in our own knowledge and understanding of the neuroscience attached to why we do what we do. I'm losing my train of thought, sorry, but just that as a team or as a staff, that we're learning together, we're growing in our knowledge, so that it strengthens our collaboration, and I suppose our movement towards what we're wanting to provide, the environment we want to provide for our kids. Yeah.
And again, it's all about that confidence for teachers, isn't it, to know that it's rooted in evidence, and again, it comes back to what Andrew was saying, our why, about
100%.
Yeah. Cool, thank you. Okay, this is coming up to our fourth question here. How can educators effectively balance the need for academic achievement and assessment with the importance of play in promoting children's social, emotional and cognitive development? So I'm going to hand over to Carolyn there to start us off with that one.
Kia ora e te whānau. It's lovely to see you all. Oh my gosh, I needed like an hour just to talk about what I want to talk about. So maybe Sarah, we should catch up another time.
There's a bell shortly. I'll ring a bell.
I want to talk really fast. Anne, I loved what you were saying about integration, because we can cleverly integrate, the curriculum and play. However, I do want to sort of challenge our thinking as well, because I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been talking a lot recently about executive function. And, there's a huge body of research showing that executive function is like basically the gold standard for learning readiness and achievement in learning. And what we actually know and understand is that, executive function it grows over time, it develops. And also there's a huge, again, body of research showing and proving that actual social play, dramatic play really supports, fosters and develops the growth of executive function. So if we're looking to try and meet those, academic achievement needs, surely we should be prioritizing things that are going to support the cognitive and social and emotional development of our tamariki. So I think play is definitely the way. Things like dramatic play, particularly when you're jumping in and out of roles and so on, but also, the deliberate acts of teaching that we can do can support, things like working memory. I could talk and talk and talk. I know that I can't, but, I really want us to think not so much about balance, because that's like a dirty, sweary word for us educators, isn't it? Trying to balance things. But just think again, as other people were talking about, remember our why and be quite unapologetic about why play is important, and that it is incredibly linked with the neuroscience, the research that we've talked about. And we really do need to, I guess, educate everyone about the importance of play for our young people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just speaking with someone today who asked me, about play. And one of the things that we know now, and the research is very clear on, is that there are parts of the brain that will not develop without play. So it's more than just this nice to have on top of everything else. It's actually critical to our brain development, isn't it?
Absolutely. They talk about a play poverty now with children, and that's so sad, because we want to promote this. We don't want children stuck on couches on their devices, do we?
Absolutely. Yeah. Leslie, can I come to you?
Yeah, this is a massive area, isn't it? So I could go on and on for hours too, and I have burbled away in blogs if anyone's interested in reading it. I guess my journey into play helped me understand the individual, and it's in knowing the individual that allowed us to shape our programs. So being prepared to give teachers time to develop knowledge, I think that is so important. Cut the fluff to get to the stuff, knowing why, knowing what you want to do, why you want to do it, what is the outcome. We do a lot of busy work in classrooms that can just go, they don't even need to be there. So that's time in itself. We are structured literacy, structured numeracy, play, they're both intertwined. They go together because it's about understanding the individual. But it's not about accelerating, it's about building foundations. And it's about giving teachers permission to say, this child hasn't started reading in the 6th, doesn't matter. Look at what they're doing in building executive functioning. Time and time again, our children start reading and they just boom. But it's coming to trust that, but teacher knowledge is crucial. If they don't know what, why, and what I'm teaching them to read and I'm teaching them to this, they have to have a priority for each child, but it does come down to the individual. That's where play is such a gift, because it gives her those times to understand, tune into those individuals, sit with those individuals. In terms of curriculum, it's super easy to find the curriculum through play, to map that, to reflect on it, to respond to it. I see them completely complementary, but it comes down to teacher knowledge. It comes down to giving time to teachers to understand, as we said before, not shoving so much stuff in that teachers just put their hands up and they have no idea what they're doing, prioritizing what we're learning now and then what we'll do next. And but for me, it's understanding the child, the learner, prioritizing what's important, cutting the fluff, working out in your classroom. I did that with my program. What am I doing for the sake of it? Because I think I have to. And what am I doing to benefit the learner? Bite-sized learning. We sit on the mat for maybe 10 minutes max. We're year 2. I suppose as a principal and teaching 3 days a week, that really helps me to understand too. So understanding cognitive overload, understanding, play is really beneficial to that. And also when I'm doing literacy and numeracy, playful moments are built in there. That's where my work with drama and Vivek and Mentor the Expert really helped me. So I guess it is time and understanding, and it's not a quick fix, but they are complementary.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leslie. Linda, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers do find this quite difficult, don't they? Finding this balance between academic achievement and assessment. And I'm particularly thinking here about direct teaching of literacy and numeracy. And then there's play. That's how a lot of teachers think of their day. So they see it in 2 parts, really. This having to cover this academic achievement through literacy and numeracy, and also try to cover the aspects of play. I think what we need to do is make sure that we can see that they actually integrate, that they overlap. They're not separate things. And one of the things that we need to encourage teachers to do is to see the literacy and the numeracy in the play, and the maths in the play. And so many times I know when we've been in classrooms and we say to teachers, let's sit and observe for a moment, and I wonder if we sit with a maths lens on here and we try to see the maths that we can see in the play. And so for some teachers that's quite difficult because they're so used to separating out maths, and we're doing maths when it's direct teaching. And I think that if we can just see the integration there and see that while children are playing, there's a huge amount of maths going on, a huge amount of literacy that we could be supporting the children with in their play. Once we see it like that, I think it becomes a lot clearer, and we can certainly then talk about children's achievement in those areas within the play, not separated out. And we still have to do our direct teaching, of course, but I'm just hoping that we can start seeing a blending in of the curriculum, not just the other curriculum areas, but with maths and literacy as well.
So as you know, as Kayla was saying, an and rather than
Yes.
or
Yes.
as well. Yeah. Amber, can I have your thoughts?
I don't really have a heck of a lot to add because that was all so good. I would just briefly say we just need to work out what serves us and what serves our children. And if it's not serving us in terms of an assessment, don't do it. If it's a follow-up activity, what's the purpose? What's it serving? Yeah, and really being reflective and critiquing on the expectations of the government or your board or your senior management or whatever, having those open conversations about the types of assessment that you're doing and if it's serving you and your children, but being proactive about assessing learning for your teaching and using that as part of your reporting, I suppose, as well. Streamlining it so that you've got more time, because we're all a bit time poor, and there's lots going on. So finding what serves you.
And again, clarifying, what are we doing assessment for? Is it assessment to inform our practice, or is it assessment to report? You know, we have to be quite transparent about that and then use that data accordingly. Thank you. I'm going to head into the fifth question here, and I just want to acknowledge Tony Howard, who's joined our panel as well. She's beaming in from France, lucky thing. So she's woken up very early and declined croissants to join us this evening. Your morning there, Tony. So Tony, I'm going to get you to come in on this question that I'll give you a bit of time to think about as the others answer this as well. So the question is, what challenges or barriers exist in ensuring equal access to quality play experiences for all children in New Zealand, particularly those with either special learning needs, neurodiverse thinkers, or those who are from marginalised or disadvantaged backgrounds? So Gareth C., I'm going to come to you first.
Yeah, mute. Yeah, barriers at our at Aotearoa, we don't have as many barriers. Our players resourced really well. We're actually very fortunate with our environment. With regards to behaviour needs and things, we struggle to get, you know what it's like getting learning assistance for, just your children who do have needs, let alone the others who do have behaviour concerns, issues and things. So that is definitely a worry for all of us principals and boards. And we find it really useful, especially in the year ones, to have a learning assistant to be in amongst the play, even though there's a teacher outside in our year one area. But how cool would it be if every single class had a learning assistant? And I know the teacher's moving in and out play, but that to me is a huge barrier. How amazing would that be if we did have another pair of eyes? In our year ones, we have Mrs. T, and she's fantastic. She helps get all the big loose parts out. She puts them away. She sets up little things based on their urges and things. And that's why it's working particularly well in the year ones and the year twos, but across the school with all the other needs we have. So it goes around resourcing. We're not funded specifically for play. How amazing would that be if we were in our ops grant? So in our school, it's not really a huge concern. When I do challenge my colleagues about would they ever consider moving into learning, just even looking at it, I think where we are, the behavior and the challenging behavior for my colleagues are huge. And usually the answer will be a straight no, because we need that control. Otherwise, if we don't have that control, but then, you know, we have great debates around, yeah, well, you know what, if you do embrace learning through play, that's a huge part of learning through play. Is that executive function? Is that self-managing? Is that the conversations and the social skills? So why would you not? Just too hard basket, because if they let go of too much control, it just turns to custard. And that's what we all know, that's what happens when you first start learning through play. But for them, it probably would never be an option. Would it never say never, because we have regular conversations. So there are always going to be barriers for our, you know, for our behavior kids and our neurodiverse children. How do we resource that better as a country? Because we know this is important, but it's not going to get any better if we don't get what we need to put this, you know, to put this together properly. Yeah, those are the only things I can think of, Koto.
Yeah. Thank you, Gareth. Annette, can I come to you?
Sure. Hi. I think, yeah, with the barriers, what can be difficult is when you have obviously a large group of children in your own class, and then you get special needs children that come in and you haven't been told anything. You've had no communication from the kindy, and then suddenly this child just arrives and it's like, ooh, and it's like, we want them to have a positive start to school. This is like, they are just starting school. We want it to be positive. We want the whole time at school to be positive, and we want them to have a sense of belonging. But we need to have that relationship with them, because children will do just about anything for you if you have a great relationship with them, and you want to keep that relationship right up till year 6, to when they leave. So just, I suppose, what the barriers are just communication from the families, like, be real about it, be realistic, tell us, because we are here to help you. We're not here to judge. We're there to help you and obviously make that positive. And also from the kindies, because I'm constantly ringing kindies around us saying, can you just tell me about little Johnny? And they're like, oh, I didn't know that we could actually do that. I thought that was a privacy thing. And it's like, no, you can, if you just let me know. And then we can set up like visits to the kindies and get to know that child a little bit better. So I suppose that's some of the barriers. And of course, teacher aides, everybody would love a teacher aide all the time, but you know, it's reality. We're lucky we have an amazing Senko at our school. I don't know how she does her job.
Yeah. And so human resourcing as well as the money would be nice in there too. Andrew, your thoughts?
It's a very hard question, Sarah. To answer. A really hard question.
The holidays, don't we?
Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer, because the way I've viewed your question is that to get equal access happening and getting rid of barriers for that equal access to quality play is about rethinking how we use our staff and our support staff and how we prioritize resourcing. I think that's where I come from. And so schools need to do a lot of work about thinking outside the box of traditional ways of using your operations grant and traditional ways of using your teacher aides. And so, for example, we use teacher aides in our shed, in our which is one of our outdoor play contexts, and therefore rethinking how you and what you train your support staff in. So that's where I'm coming from in terms of enabling equal access. Of course, all the resourcing and that we put into it is for every child to have access to. But the barrier to equal opportunity for kids, particularly kids with special needs, is if you try and use traditional ways of utilising the teacher aide that might come with that kid. If you just use that in a traditional sense around formal academic learning, that's very much a barrier to allowing that special needs kid to access play. And I hope that makes sense. So we see it just as important to have the teacher aide immersed in understanding how to support children in play, not just the traditional ways that they might be funded for to work with the kid.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And Tony, can I come to you? Your thoughts on that? Your mute's on still, sorry. Yeah, can't hear you. Can you take your mute off? Just give you a second there. No, it's all right. You'd work on that. I'm just going to pop in with an answer here as well, because I know Susie Kerr, who was due to join us this evening, would have a different take on this from Waitaha Special School as well in the South Island. And I know that Susie's doing some amazing work with her children in that special school context. And I know of other special schools that are using play-based learning in that way as well. And I know certainly some of the barriers that we've discussed is the perspective of play, and children who have special learning needs, or perhaps who see the world a little differently, or those children who are dealing with trauma or adversity in some way. There's this belief that their play might be different, that they might not be able to play, or that they shouldn't play, you know, alluding to Gareth's comments around children with behaviour needs. Look, that's the background I've had. I've dealt with kids who are incredibly volatile with their behaviour. Play is their language. That is the only way we are going to be able to address some of their needs, particularly around executive functioning, skill development, that social competency, emotional literacy. We know that play is the curriculum for that. And so those are the very children that in some ways arguably need more play to be able to have more time to practice those skills that they need to be able to interact in the community. And there is an enormous amount of work being done now on understanding particularly some aspects of neurodiversity and play, particularly around autistic traits and ASD and things like that. So we're learning more and more, but the very simple answer is that we need to really not paint a brush over kids who we think are too hard to handle in play, and instead work harder to provide them with equal access to play as well. So I'll leave everyone with that thought. Conscious of the time, and we're nearly there. We're up to the second to last question. So thanks for hanging in there, folks. I knew it was always going to be ambitious having these questions with this amount of people to get through in an hour, but we'll see how we go. So the second to final question is, what role can schools and communities play in promoting unstructured play and outdoor experiences, and how can partnerships be formed to maximise the potential impact? So I'm going to go to Anne Rush first for that one, please.
Oh, thank you. Just to give a little bit of context, our school has quite a challenging environment in terms of providing an on-site, I can see you nodding your head, Sarah, yep, providing an on-site natural environment and indoor-outdoor flow from our classrooms, and that's a long-term work in progress for us. What we've tried to do to give our children those really valuable experiences, last year we had Junkie Monkeys come into school, and that was just fabulous. A lot of our teachers who were at the very beginning of their play journey saw a lot of their children in quite different lights. And some amazing writing and some other curriculum learning actually came out of that. It was just fabulous. We also, at the beginning of this year, we decided we'd take our children out of our school environment, and we went down to one of our local domains that they're actually all quite familiar with. But we used Conscious Kids, and we had a beautiful experience down there with Conscious Kids. And again, our parent helpers who came along saw that area in a different light. They could see the potential. It's not just climbing the playgrounds and riding the bike tracks. There's a lot more to it there. And that, again, was a beautiful experience. Also, I'd highly recommend Harco Brown. I happened to come across, and this is in terms of me enriching my knowledge of my local school environment. There happened to be something the council provided, and he was doing a little walk through a local bush area, showing some Māori artefacts and games you could play, and I went along to that, and that was just fabulous. And I happened to run into Nicola Tyler from Windy Ridge School. She had the same idea as me. So we sort of need to provide this play for our children. We also need to upskill ourselves in knowing our local area as well. You can hardly talk about it if you don't know about it. So that was really valuable. And I'd like long term to get Harko Brown to come to our school. He was just fabulous.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Anne. Anne Langus.
Yeah, just a quick one for me. I thought it would be worth making sure everyone's aware of the kind of growing healthy active learning team in terms of Sport New Zealand, because they do have increasingly a role called community connector, or it might be called something else in your region. But that team is really getting some momentum, and there's starting to be some really neat examples of how they're able to liaise between local community groups and schools to support initiatives like things that like walking school buses and painted kind of interesting visual things on the footpaths to encourage play on the way to school, and schools looking for ways to keep their school grounds open on the weekends when maybe previously they had been closed or not encouraged kids to play, but feeling more comfortable as part of that kind of initiative that's more coordinated by that Sport New Zealand Healthy Active Learning team. So just have a think about that one.
Yeah, thank you. And they're doing some great work in that space as well. Kate, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I was going to mention that as well, Anne, because it's a really incredible resource. Play is totally on Sport New Zealand's radar now. It's sport, recreation and play. So there's funding there, and there's trained play specialists within Sport New Zealand who are looking for any and every way possible to activate play within schools and in their wider community. I went on an incredible, which I mentioned before, when going to a net school, on an incredible tour through 3 different schools in my area of Tamaki Makaurau, and heard about a healthy active learning advisor who'd gone in. And it's almost like he'd co-designed their outdoor space. So they were already having this corridor around how they can provide more play opportunities during break times at schools. And he'd corridored with the teachers. He'd gone in and corridored with the students to hear student voice. And so into a place where they were actually activating students' ideas, teachers' ideas, and to kind of regenerating and rethinking about how their outdoor space activated unstructured play during break times. So I think break times is really interesting as people are often, their kids are in classrooms, the bell goes, they go outside and they're their own things, and we don't need to kind of think about them. So I think thinking about how kids are moving and being active and playing at break times is really interesting. And I think that's why the Loose Parts Play movement is quite fascinating, watching schools get things like the Magic Play Box in, or us Junkie Monkeys, to kind of see what it's like and within their context, giving kids different opportunities to play rather than those traditional things where they they might kick a ball around, or actually they don't actually know what to do, because break times can be really stressful for some kids. So I think that's a really interesting opportunity. I think that was it from me.
Thanks, Kate. Linda, anything to add?
No, I haven't got a lot to add, but I'd probably just add to Kate's mentioning about break times. I think it's really important that if we're going to make a focus on children's play with large loose parts, that we bring our parents along as well. And I'm a great advocate for open days for parents to come and see their children playing with loose parts, and maybe a focus on the outdoors, so parents can see the value in it. And I think not just have them sort of come along and observe on their own, but move around amongst them and talk about what the children are actually doing, and pointing out the learning that's happening and how it's linked to the curriculum. I know that schools were so overloaded, but unfortunately one of our roles is to educate parents as well. And I think all this starts with parents before we can even think about the wider community. We've got to get our parents on board, and we can only do that if we work alongside them. So, you know, having a number of open days with particular focus. So it might be that we're going to be inside for one particular open day, we're going to be outside for another, and try to get as many parents along as possible. And I know that's easier said than done, but sausage sizzles are always pretty good to bring parents along around dinner times, and with invitations for preschoolers as well. So try and make it easy for parents.
Yeah, thank you. And Leslie, your thoughts?
Oh, I didn't have a lot to add to that. I just, whenever I go in and visit schools, look around, I have this question in my head: who does this place belong to? And if I can't see children there, then it's probably not a place that promotes unstructured play. Our place is a bit messy, but you sure can see the children in there. So I guess one way is to actually talk nicely to your caretaker and not worry about how neat and tidy your school is, but put the emphasis on children here. Is this their place? Yeah, can I see them in this space? The other thing we do is empty classroom day. And we do that once a term, and we invite parents in, and children come prepared, and they spend the whole day, the whole school self-directing all day. It's got bigger and bigger every time we do it. Unfortunately, the weather has been not great. I don't think we've had a dry, empty classroom day for a few times, but it is one great way of promoting that play. And as soon as we started doing it, parents were like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing. My child had the best day at school ever. So, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I know that we are incredibly fortunate here in New Zealand to have the amount of break times we have, the environments that we've got for our children to freely go out into in those break times, and promoting you know, that outdoor experience alongside our inside work in the classroom. So it's really important that we keep our parents, you know, really understanding the importance of that as well. Okay, we've hit the home straight. Final question now for this evening, and that is considering the increasing prevalence of digital technologies in children's lives, how can educators strike a balance between incorporating technology and fostering traditional active play experiences? I'm going to throw a spanner in the works here, and I'm going to go to the reverse order of people I've asked to answer this question. So I'm going to go to Gareth S first, if you're able to respond to that, Gareth.
Yeah, sure. We've had lots of interesting discussions here at school about that. Like the idea of play and technology can sometimes seem to be at loggerheads. We're, as a school, we're down the pathway of becoming an Apple distinguished school. So we kind of hold technology quite highly as well as holding play quite highly. I think for me, it comes down to the purpose behind these things. Technology is just another tool that can enhance kids' creativity. We did a lot of work in setting up our school curriculum with Mark Osborne, and he challenged us that to the idea that kids enter school from ECE with really divergent thinking, playful thinking, he called it. And by the end of primary school, it's largely just eroded away. So his challenge to us was, it's our job to ensure that kids' playful thinking is kept alive. And technology can be a huge part for that, as well as, you know, obviously play. I don't see them as being opposites or anti. A good example, just last term, in my new entrant open learning environment, they were having a whole bunch of invitations around pirates. So kids were creating pirate hats and swords and all that kind of carry on. And one of the teachers just got out a big green sheet, got out the iPads, and the kids were green screening themselves onto a pirate ship. And they were making up sea shanties and singing things like that, all captured digitally and all able to be shared out to whānau and to our school. So that's a way of using technology in a really playful way to really enhance what the kids were up to. It didn't detract from them making and creating, but in fact, it sort of added a whole other layer to it. Another example would be around the idea that if you really want to foster resilience and dispositions in kids in a playful way, if you give them a robot and an iPad and you say to them, I want you to code that robot to go from one side of the classroom and then come back to its starting place, and you listen to them work together, the rich conversations they have to have, the collaboration they're forced to do, the problem solving, the failures, the resilience that comes from all that, You can do the same with blocks and building a tower, but you can also do the same with robots and an iPad. So I know that there can be the worry that there's kids are getting too much screen time. And we're not certainly in front of screens the whole time here at Douglas Park. But we do believe that technology's got a role in terms of helping kids be creative in that digital space.
Yeah, and I think it does come down to the quality of the choices around the digital tech, isn't it? And again, being very purposeful about how that's supporting learning rather than being a exchange for learning or an exchange for collaboration or exchange for social interaction. So it's being very selective about how you're using it and the reasons for it, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Amber, come to you.
I really admire the things that you've been working with Gareth on and how you're using technology in your school and collaboratively with play as well. I teach in the junior school, and I think that our use of technology seems to be quite natural. Like our children are digital children, they get a lot of play on their devices at home, and so I think in my classroom particularly, I like to try and have technology as a tool. So the use of it's quite natural. It's easy to pick up your phone to research about Bigfoot or the International Space Station or things like that. And again, an iPad, if a child wants to use it to look at or to use those sorts of images or a little bit of research, because they're not prolific readers yet, you know, how they can use it in their play, but as a tool rather than a toy, and as for learning or for as part of their learning rather than something to play on. I'd have a preference to having my children be outside or to be making with materials at this age. Further up the school, my colleagues been using their Chromebooks in their classroom as part of their play. They did a really cool unit about narrative writing, and they used the Chromebooks to record their story that they had taken photos of the narrative when they'd made the characters with Lego and things like that. So used it as a tool rather than, it can be easily a toy. So our focus more is the natural use of it.
Yeah, thank you. Anne.
I was thinking about a particular a few teachers that I've been working with that have been struggling with this particular issue, and we had an interesting conversation because they were asking me, what do you think? Is this okay? Is it okay to give them the choice to use tablets during the playtime, or really should we? They wanted me to tell them should they allow the choice because it's their choice, and if they want to do it, they should have the choice. So my question back to them, coach in the school, putting the question back to them, I said, well, what is the purpose? What is the purpose? So that goes to, what Amber and Gareth, you were talking about, the why. Why do you have them there? So, and this just, was a very tricky question for them. They kind of said, well, they like it. It's really settling for them. But they thought, okay, obviously we need to reflect on this a bit more. But then when I came back the next time to talk with them, they actually said, well, we've realized there's more to it. There's a lot of communication that happens between them when they're playing these games. And also there's a real equity issue here, because a lot of these kids, a lot of our akonga do not have access to these things at home. There might, it's just not something that they get, and we want to give them access to it. But through that conversation, they were then able to say, okay, but thinking about the why, we can see that they will choose that over all else. So we've decided to give them a designated time, another time of the day, to acknowledge how their desire and their choice there, but that the tablets are not going to be available during the more active play time period. And they've been trialing that with great success. But they, I think that key of acknowledging the why and recognizing them being able to articulate their why of why they had it, as rather than just a worksheet follow-up equivalent, basically a busy work type of thing.
Yeah, Yeah, and many people will have heard me say there's lots of crap apps on the market, and we have to be quite careful about what gets put in front of our children in the name of educational apps, because they're definitely very questionable ones out there on the market as well. Thank you for that, Anne. Kate, final person to address the question for this evening.
Yeah, I found this question really hard because I run a program where we're taking kids outside of the classroom and we're taking them completely away from screens and devices to explore and be creative and use that hands-on experience. So, I think what I'd like teachers to kind of be thinking about is we're very, is that, I guess, that word balance that you kind of put in the question there, because we have really embraced technology and we're kind of drowning some of these kids in technology, if not at school, or if they're, if they have that luck to have it at home. How can we equally provide opportunities for them to explore creative thought and to learn hands-on, to extrinsically learn through making, through doing? And so, and especially for our older students who potentially are working on Chromebooks all day, I hear teachers talking about how kids, they're not able to brainstorm, or they're not able to come up with creative thought, or they just don't have that resilience, or they're really scared of failing, of doing something and not doing it well. So how can you provide opportunities for them to be creative outside of a screen? And I just think loose parts play or doing something with your hands is just so important for that. And it's such a beautiful opportunity to have something so open and free. Or kind of like Gareth was saying, maybe you set them a challenge of saying, hey, you've got to get this you've got to make a go-kart and you've got to get it from here, A to B kind of thing. How can you make it so that they're doing something with their hands?
Yeah. And I think it's really important that when we're looking at that balance in our school setting, and we know that technology is here, it's about what, it's our lives for our children and their generation. So can we answer the question, are they equally having amount of time to be active? Are their brains active? Are they able to move about as a result? And if not, if they're passive and they're sitting more often than not, then we know we've got a problem with it. But if we are using technology that's fit for purpose, that's challenging, all that executive function development and creativity and problem solving and everything else, the social and collaboration, everything, then technology is there aiding that development, isn't it, rather than clouding it and not providing that opportunity. So yeah, thank you. Before we finish up, is there anything anyone would like to add or say while we're all together? Anything anyone wants to add to our conversation this evening? No, silence, stunned silence. Well, look, thank you everyone for joining me this evening. It's an absolute delight to have such a wealth of knowledge and experience here, and a real passion for those of us watching. These people are your silent warriors, and sometimes not so silent, which is also great when it comes to really advocating for our children and for their right to play and for their right to have a playful experience of learning and being at school and learning appropriately to their developmental stage that they're at. So it's a real honour to have you all join me for this discussion this evening. I do hope everyone who has been watching and who will watch this has found this really useful. I know that everyone here, as far as I'm aware, is all a participant of our Facebook group. So if you've heard something from someone here that you want to learn more about, please reach out to them, or if you can't get them, contact me and I can put you in touch with the amazing expertise and wisdom that's sitting here in this Zoom room this evening. So ngā mihi koutou, thank you very much. I'd just like to close this session with a karakia once again, and I do hope that everyone enjoys their last few days of the holidays before we head into that really interesting term that is term 3 ahead. So, matariki te tipua, matariki te whawhito, tau mai te wairua, mai ngā ira atua, ki te ira tangata tihei Māori ora. Pō Māori everyone, have a wonderful rest of the week. Ka kite.